What's up everyone, my name is Astronaut Kitty. Today we're going to be talking to online multiplayer for The Last of Us. And basically I'm just going to give you guys everything that I possibly know on how to do well in this multiplayer. I know it's got a pretty steep learning curve for most people, and some people can get deterred by that pretty quickly, but hopefully if you guys watch this you can gain some other tips and end up beasting in this online multiplayer. So without wasting any time, let's get right into it. So just quickly going over the very basics, every game that you play is classified as one day, and your ultimate goal is to survive up until the end of the 12 weeks, where there's going to be a supply drop for either the Hunter or the Fireflies, whichever one you chose to be. But the way that you survive up until this end of the 12 weeks is by building up your own survivor group, and the way that you do that is by doing well in the games and picking up the blue canisters or supplies, which I'll talk about a bit later. Ultimately, the amount of survivors that you have doesn't really matter as long as you have one by the end of the 12 weeks. But if you want those cooler customization options like the hats or the masks, then you'll definitely want to build up your own survivor group, as that's the way that they're unlocked through the amount of survivors that you have and also by how long you've survived for. The last thing I wanted to mention about this survivor group is that The Last of Us has a pretty cool Facebook feature where if you sync your Facebook contacts with The Last of Us, then instead of coming up with just random people saying like, oh, this person has just restrung a bow or something like that, it'll come up with your friend's name saying that your friends have just skinned her out or something like that, and they'll put those names into your own survivor group. So I thought that that was cool, but it doesn't really impact that much on the gameplay. The next thing I wanted to talk about relates back to how many survivors you can have and how you lose and gain survivors. As you can see, there's random events here. This was one of the bad ones. There's good ones where you can gain survivors as well, but what you have to do is complete a certain amount of one task. As you can see, there's a big list here. And when you do the same one over and over again, the amount that you have to do in 3 days or 3 games increases, so it's a bit more difficult if you do the same one over and over again. But as you can see here, I did complete it, or I did the most that I possibly could, and still I unfortunately lost 7 clan members to that. I've seen worse ones. There's terrible ones where you can lose 100% of your clan if you don't do any of them, and I believe that there's 2 of those in the last week, so it's probably best for you guys to save up some of the easier tasks to do for those last 2 weeks, and just leave them reserved for the 100% loss of clan task. The third thing I wanted to talk about today was supplies, and now as I said before, supplies are very important. They're the whole currency or point system to The Last of Us. You really should try and get that threshold amount that you need per game, as it's very important to your survivor group and getting new survivors and keeping your survivors healthy. The main tip I can give you guys regarding supplies is that you don't have to pick them up as soon as you kill someone. They don't just spawn throughout the entire game, so if you see one that's way out of your way, don't worry about it. Just play the game throughout, and then probably later, or more than likely in the game, you can probably just pick them up just by randomly walking wherever you want to go. So don't be stupid and run out into the open just to pick up supplies. You can do it later. The fourth tip that I've got for you guys is in regards to the minimap, and you show up as a red dot on an enemy's radar if you shoot, obviously, but also if you're holding down sprint. So therefore, it's probably best that you guys don't sprint too much. The only time that I do sprint is off the rip to the first crafting lockbox, and that's just basically because they already know where you're spawning, so it doesn't really matter if you show up on the minimap. And then obviously the other time that I do is when I'm running away, and if I'm about to die. Obviously if you're about to die, they know where you are and you need to do everything possible, so that's also another time when sprinting is okay. So apart from that, try and minimize your sprinting, because it's a major disadvantage for the enemies to know where you are. The next tip I can give you guys is related to crafting, and crafting in The Last of Us for me is sort of like casting in chess. You guys should be doing it early and often, but in saying that, you should probably make correct judgment calls on what you guys should be crafting. Usually if I have a 2x4, the first weapon that I always make is a modded 2x4. The reason for this being that obviously it's a one hit down when they're close enough to you, so it's helpful in sticky situations. And also if you don't use it and you die, you still keep it when you spawn. But if you have a 2x4 that is not modded and you die, then you actually lose that when you respawn. Another helpful tip that I can help you guys out with is that when you go to pick up the items from the crafting box, if you hold down triangle, you'll actually pick up all of the items at once instead of having to like button mash triangle, and it really helps you save precious seconds and gets you a sort of a really nice advantage over the enemies. The sixth tip that I can help you guys out with is in regards to the in-game store. Now you guys, every day of the week should be prioritizing your parts for weapon upgrades. Obvious reason for this being that you'll just have better weapons than everyone else, so straight up you'll just be beasting and feasting straight off the rip. Also the other options like the armor isn't really that great, because if you get shot in the legs, it's basically the exact same as if you weren't wearing armor. so it isn't really that great if you come up against a skilled player who knows what they're doing. Also with the ammo, I try and be as stingy as possible, whether that just be like crafting some sort of item or just meleeing people. I always try and save up and prioritize my parts for those weapon upgrades. The next thing that I can help you guys out with is in regards to weapons, probably the most important thing to a lot of people, and there's not really any guns that stand out. The Last of Us multiplayer is pretty well balanced overall. In saying that though, I do prefer to use the bow and the semi-auto rifle. Firstly, the bow is only 2-shot down and it's a 1-shot execution once they are down, so it's a pretty lethal killer, a silent assassin because you don't show up on the minimap when you use it. And then also the semi-auto rifle is basically just an all-round great gun. Whatever situation you get yourself into, the semi-auto is probably going to help you out a lot. So check out those two. The two classes that I like to use are actually not custom classes. I like to use the two presets. Firstly the stealth for the bow, and then the one that's called support for the semi-auto. Also, if you guys are struggling to get your amount of supplies in a match, I suggest that you use this support class because it's got something called first aid training, and I think it's level 2 or 3, I'm not quite sure, but what it allows you to do is you can bandage your wounded teammates, and you're not sort of getting involved in firefights all too much, but it's giving you a lot of parts just for helping out your teammates, so I highly suggest that you guys check out support if you're struggling. The next tip that I can give you guys is basically everything to do with gunfights. Firstly, if you're aiming at someone, always make sure you click in that R3 and mark the enemy. Firstly, it's very helpful to your teammates and you. If you don't get that kill, then you can probably anticipate where they're about to go. And also you get the bonus 25 parts when you do mark them, so it's obviously a bonus to you. When you're in a gunfight, always finish the gunfight before you go for special executions or revives. There is no point in you running out and putting yourself in danger and then possibly getting down by an enemy just trying to revive one of your teammates that's down. If your teammate isn't right next to you and if you're not behind cover, then just completely forget about reviving them until you finish your gunfight. Also, regarding revives and executions, if I had $1 for every time that someone walked past me when I was down to get a special execution and then I have died, I would be rich by now. It's so ironic also because you receive 100 parts for a revive, but you only receive 75 parts for a special execution. Also, 2 of the 3 game types are heavily, or they're completely based on how many respawns you have. So it's always better to respawn or revive your teammate first, because that way you have an extra respawn counter in the later moments of the game. So it's always helpful. So in saying that, always revive your teammates before special executions. That is probably, if there's one thing that you remember from this video, make it that. So the second to last tip that I have for you guys is basically this clip that you're watching now. As you can see, we're rolling really well as a team, and I'd never met these people before. I wasn't even using my chat cable, I didn't have my microphone in, but we were just doing really well, and the reason for that is because we were together. We weren't like right on top of each other, where one Molotov or one bomb would kill like 3 or 4 of us. But we're sort of like spread out, but we're together. The whole thing that you guys need to understand about this multiplayer is that if you want to do well, you need to work as a team. You need to be close to your teammates, because if you go off by yourself and you come up against even 2 enemies, you may down one enemy, but more than likely they're going to down you. They'll probably just revive the person that you downed, and then you're just stuck there with a death instead of anything. So it's really important that you guys should roll together as a team, rely on each other's strengths and stuff like that. As you can see here, I'm using support, so I'm just bandaging my teammates. And basically, if you want to be good at this game, just practice teamwork. That's all you need to do, really. Unless, of course, if you're an absolute beast and you can just go off by yourself and just destroy everyone. But if that was the case, you wouldn't be watching this video, would you now? The 10th and final tip that I have for you guys today isn't that much of a secret, just a nice little one to finish off with, and that is to play the single player first. Firstly, I could just ramble for a good 10 minutes, I reckon, on how good this single player is and how you'd be doing a massive disservice to yourself if you didn't play it. But as well as that, it gets you really used to the controls, this layout, and the whole way that the Last of Us Online works. It's very different to other generic shooters. So playing the single player gets you very familiar with the controls and all that good stuff, and it really helps you out when you first go in to play your first game of multiplayer. So lastly, play the single player first. Anyway guys, that's gonna about do it for this video. I spent a lot of time on this bitch, so hopefully you guys did enjoy it and that you did get something out of it. Maybe something you didn't know before out of these 10 tips. But anyway guys, I want to thank you for watching. This has been Astronaut Kitty, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!